When I reflect on the idea of the circle of my love, I start by feeling so privileged to have grown up in this Unitarian Universalist church community where I was taught to share love generously from an early age. My family role models and my church family role models, many of whom are in the audience today, truly lived out our principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. My parents called the unhoused, mentally ill, or developmentally disabled we encountered our brothers and sisters, and I was taught to look at those that were different from me with empathy and care. We adopted friends into our family. I have many uncles, aunts, and grandparents who are not blood related, but are loved as family nonetheless. A dear family friend affectionately nicknamed our family the Johnson Sachs Love Bubble, partly because my parents loved their friends so fully, just as they are, with all of their eccentricities. I grew up with friends from many different walks of life with many different belief systems, and we were generally able to get along and find love for each other, no matter our backgrounds, fairly easily. As I've aged, however, the free-thinking Unitarian Universalist in me has started to question how I can widen the circle of people that I can love and live out my UU values in an increasingly polarized world. I found I was particularly challenged in having a heart open to empathy and love for every person after moving back to the Central Valley during a contentious time in our country's history. After high school, I attended UC Berkeley, where it wasn't difficult to find many like-minded friends with similar value systems. I lived in the Bay Area for 9 years, where I connected on a deep level with most of my classmates and colleagues without needing to try. I could freely discuss current events in the staff lunchroom at my schools in Oakland, knowing that for the most part, my worldview and values would align with my colleagues. Moving back to Fresno, however, I was reminded about how certain topics of conversation were just off the table in the lunchroom, lest they lead to a heated and uncomfortable conversation, which may result in a certain amount of respect lost for a colleague. I have found myself questioning my relationships with colleagues and even close childhood friends after hearing their reactions to the Black Lives Matter movement, the election of our former president, our country's immigration policy, and many other issues. But when I find my heart starting to close and writing these people off, I really do feel tugged back toward my values. It's easy to love those in our bubble. Love is easy to share when worldviews are shared. But is there any benefit to withholding love from those whose values don't align with ours? How is my heart impacted when I choose to shut out those that disagree with me? Closing my heart is ultimately closing my mind and perhaps only adding to the polarization that is currently plaguing our nation. Reflecting on this topic made me think of the StoryCorps One Small Step project that I keep hearing about on Valley Public Radio, which, according to their website, quote, brings people with different political values together to record a 15-minute conversation, not about politics, but about who we are as people. One small step is based on contact theory, which states that a meaningful interaction between people with opposing views can help turn thems into us's, end quote. It truly is harder to hate up close. Could widening the circle of my love be as simple as me being more open to conversations with those that disagree with me and trying to find some empathy and common ground? Could being open to these conversations rather than shying away from them help bring more appreciation and compassion on both sides? Thinking about these issues are more relevant than ever for me now that I'm a parent and have little eyes watching. If I imagine the role model I want to be and the world that I want my daughter and son to be, to grow up in, I think it's a world where hearts are wide open to listening, even to those that disagree with us, and where people try to find the good within each other. Just the other night, I signed up for the One Small Step program. Maybe I'll have an eye-opening conversation which helps me and this other person find the inherent worth and dignity in each other and play a part in making our community a friendlier place. It certainly can't hurt to have my heart open to the possibility.
I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. The words of Rainier Maria Rilke. The Reverend Gretchen Haley, the Unitarian Universalist minister, tells this story. There is this man who still loves to read the Sunday newspaper cover to cover instead of on the smartphone or computer or tablet. Remember these? So, true confession, who still likes to hold the paper copy to read? Okay, good, some of us. So, this man loved to read the Sunday paper cover to cover. There's just one problem. This man has a 5-year-old daughter who, for as much as her dad loves to read the paper, she loves to interrupt him while he tries to do so. The man tries everything to keep her occupied, but to no avail. Finally, one day, as he's trying to read, he comes across the travel section and has an idea. There, across the whole front page, there is a map of the world. He rips that page off, and then he tears it into little pieces, tiny little pieces, many, many, many little pieces. And then he tears it this way in many pieces. There we go. Then he calls his daughter over to him and he shows her all the little pieces. He says, "Honey, here's a game for you. It's a puzzle. Go grab some tape and then see what you can do to put all these pieces back together the way they're supposed to go." She cheerfully agreed and ran off. 5 minutes later, however, his daughter came back with the page all taped together. The man shook his head, amazed, though he wondered if she had just put the pieces back haphazardly. A careful inspection revealed the map was perfectly reconstructed. He looked at his daughter in disbelief. She must surely be a genius. "How did you figure it out so quickly?" She shrugged and said, "It was easy, Daddy. On the other side of the paper was a picture of a person. I know what a person looks like. I just put the person together and the whole world fell into place." I just put the person together and the whole world fell into place. We're living in a time that is rife with tearing people down and tearing people apart. So many of us have adopted a them versus us perspective, and we are reducing people to their worst qualities. But this story tells us that if we can see the whole person, the world just might fall into place. As I've often said, religion is based on a root word that means to make whole again. The purpose of religion, including Unitarian Universalism, should be to teach us how to take that which is broken, ripped down, or ripped apart, and help make it whole so the world falls into place. This past week, I got on my computer in an email an online story from the Fresno Bee about the contentious and hate-filled Wednesday night Fresno Unified School District meeting. A meeting filled with parents rudely ranting and spewing falsehoods about COVID vaccine, mask wearing, and alleged assaults on personal liberty and freedom. The moment that I saw the photo of those parents on my computer screen, in my head, I started calling those parents some very unministerial names. Until I caught myself. There I was, reducing those parents' identities to one moment in time and one singular aspect of who they are. It was like I tore up the fullness of their humanity into tiny little pieces and held onto the one nasty piece and let the others float to the floor. That isn't what Unitarian Universalism calls us to do. To define those parents not as a problem, but as people. I needed to pick back up some of those pieces of their humanity that I had torn off and discarded. I had to remember that, as our Unitarian Universalist faith teaches, every person has worth and dignity, even the people we may not like. I had to remember that those parents are there because they've been lied to and manipulated by those who are seeking to create division and dissension. They were there because they honestly believed that what they were saying was true. These are parents who love their children, and fueled by the information they've been fed, they are trying to create what they think is the best situation for their kids. Now, granted, that doesn't excuse their rudeness, their coarseness, or their absolute lack of civility, but frustrated people often behave badly. But dear ones, as a Unitarian Universalist, no matter how frustrated, we are called to remember to not behave badly. Unitarian Universalism recalls us from our unskillful self to our best self again. We're called to widen the circle of our love. We can still oppose the source of what those parents stand for. We can still speak truth in the face of lies. We can oppose their dangerous and misinformed demands. But we can do so from a more empathetic place for the people involved. We can do so from a more empathetic place for the people involved. Leslie Jamison, in her collection of essays entitled The Empathy Exam, notes, empathy isn't just something that happens to us, a meteor shower of synapses firing across the brain. Empathy is also a choice we make. It's made of exertion, that dowdier cousin of impulse. The act of choosing empathy simply means we've committed ourselves to a set of behaviors greater than the sum of our individual inclinations. I thought about our inclination to reduce someone to one aspect of their personhood when I heard about what happened recently in a New Jersey mall. Another instance of police officers looking at a black teenager and seeing only a problem and not a person. As reported by NBC New York, and I'm quoting their news story, video of the incident shows a group of young people gathered in a seating area in the mall, and two boys, one white and one black, standing up in a verbal altercation. The black teen, Zakai Hussein, age 14, said the dispute started when he stood up to the other boy, who was older, for picking on his friend. The confrontation escalated with the two boys throwing punches at each other as the onlookers shouted, according to the video. After several seconds of punching, two uniformed police officers ran onto the scene and pulled the two apart. One officer pushed the white teen into a seated position on the couch, according to the video. Meanwhile, Zakai, the black teen, already on the ground, was pinned onto his stomach by a male officer, with the officer's knee appearing to be on his back. A female officer then helped, placing her knee near the back of Zakai's neck as they put him in handcuffs. The white person was left to sit on a couch, and at one point stood up and looked over the scene as the two officers restrained Zakai. One white person sitting on a couch. The black person was brutally handcuffed. If in our own lives we look at someone and see only a problem and not a person, we do what those two police officers did a week ago Saturday in that New Jersey mall. There are two questions that touch at the core of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. Who is inside the circle of your love? Who is outside the circle of your love? Like is different than love. Like is a feeling. Love is how we act. The purpose of our Unitarian Universalist faith is to expand the boundaries of our heart so we can hold more, care more, and love more. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, current president of our National Unitarian Universalist Association, and the Reverend Erica A. Hewitt say, Unitarian Universalists believe we're here to guide one another toward love, because no one is outside the circle of love. No one is outside the circle of love. Could you say that with me, please? No one is outside the circle of love. That is so easy to say. It is so hard to do. But no one said being a Unitarian Universalist was easy. It takes work. It takes deep spiritual work. We began with a story of a child seeing a person in the midst of broken pieces, and we will end with a similar story. Yesterday, at the celebration of life for longtime member and beloved member Karen Goodman, one of her dear friends, Carolyn Murphy, told a short, true story of how Karen Goodman expanded the circle of her love and changed lives in doing so. I've asked Carolyn to share this story with us to end the sermon.
Karen didn't suffer fools lightly. She had no patience with hypocrisy, but she was always on the lookout for people with hearts of gold. And Larry is and was one of those people. When there were encampments downtown in Fresno, 4 carloads of people that formed the Thursday group visited weekly, talking to people and distributing supplies. Larry was homeless at the time, but he was very responsible. And Mike Rhodes had hired him to keep various areas around the encampment clean. Karen and Larry took a liking to each other immediately, and this whole group formed a relationship with him. Larry looked after them when they were visiting. They took pride when he was the first person to be selected to live at the studio apartments called the Renaissance. When there were projects to be done at her house, Karen thought of Larry. She learned that he had a green thumb. Soon he was in charge of the landscape, enhancing the beauty of the yard with tender, expert care. He was so proud of the flowers and vegetables, especially the artichokes, that he could offer friends of the family. Then he was staying in the house when Karen and Al were traveling. He stayed in the bedroom a lot for fear someone would see a black man in the window and call the police. Because he was close to Karen, Larry helped at Wings. He drove the U-Haul truck and he helped move furniture. Karen and Al helped Larry get a car, and then as their own health deteriorated, Karen thought one solution was to have Larry take Al to some of his doctor appointments and to take him on regular outings to Costco. He's still doing these things today. This is a beautiful story of mutual trust, of hearts open to seeing each other. They enhanced each other's lives. Would that we would all be open to seeing the gold in each other.